is there was a gentleman, when we go down to St. Paul Church, there's a big cemetery behind the church. It's actually a mixed cemetery. Dr. Sproul did a whole research on the Turner family. Benjamin Turner was the burial director for the church. And virtually everybody who lived in Eastchester in the late 1700s, early 1800s was buried by Benjamin Turner. And he was an entrepreneur. And he was a free African American who owned property here. And the importance of the story is when you hear the story about Oil City. Oil City was a grant from the city of Mount Vernon to the big oil companies that took the property from the Turner heirs and gave it to the oil companies without compensation. Wow. So when you see all these big oil companies along the Hutchinson River, this was Turner family property that was stolen. Okay, and the proposal I'm offering to you to make is, I don't know what Longfellow did for Mount Vernon, but we've named 2 schools for him. One of those schools could certainly be named for the Benjamin Turner.
Yes.
And there's a big piece of property there. The piece of property between St. Paul Church and the water, and all the way up to the Kingsbridge Bridge that goes over to the Fairway Market. That piece of property was Turner Woods. And if you look on the old maps, and I have one of Dr. Sproul's books here that I could show you the drawing, that was considered Turner Woods. So I would think that showing homage to perhaps one of the first African American entrepreneurs of Mount Vernon would be to name a school and a property for Turner. Okay, so if you're interested, write to me, write to Michelle Walker, the president of the school board. Tell her that that would be a wonderful thing for us to do, to acknowledge heroes from Mount Vernon. Okay?
All right, everybody, just real quick. We have a couple of historic spots here. We learned about the gentleman who dug the graves over here at St. Paul's. But right behind us, remember we were talking about the railway line that we call the High Line? It's kind of like the High Line. It's right back here. This whole buttress area that's being held up, this whole grassy area, is where the train used to run. If you look here at this wall at the street we just came down from, there were metal trestles that held the train, and it went across Mount Vernon and went up from there. So the city has now designated this land parkland, so it'll never be built on, nobody can buy it. But the fear for the city, from the city's perspective, who's a resident of Mount Vernon here? Everybody? Yeah. From the city's perspective, it would be very expensive if that wall was to fall, because the city is not prepared for that repair. So that's one of the reasons why the city kind of wanted to sell it to somebody else to take care of, because then that wall would be their responsibility. So as residents of Mount Vernon, you got to see it from 2 sides. One side is that it's great to have parkland, but there's a cost to it. So if that wall was to fall, and walls do fall, that wall has been there since the 1930s. If that wall was to fall, the city would have to pay for it immediately. And it would be very expensive to do, because we would have to do it immediately. But it's good that it's a parkland now. There's birds that live up in that area. It's a nice blocker for the chemicals from Oil City that are here now. So the residents are really taking full advantage of the parkland that's there. Okay? Oh, another thing we should point out is that this is the Salvation Army. This is a major spot for Salvation Army. They do great things for the community. You know, you can bring your clothes here. There's a thrift store here for people that can't afford new furnishings. This has been here for years. One day we have to pull up the history on the Salvation Army and this building here. Gentlemen live here as well. It's a social group that started by religious institutions. So this is a good thing that Mount Vernon has, to have Salvation Army here. Okay? All right.
Town, who was going to run the state, that was also decided here, and they would bring a Bible, and they would swear in the Bible that they would be honest and be true. These two, we all know politicians. This was the actual original church spot. The church that was here in the 1600s, not this church, which came later in the 1700s, was an old wood cove. It was used as a hospital during the Revolutionary War. And the significance of that is when you're fighting German settlers as an American troop that came from England, you're not used to the American cold, which is a little bit more humid. So what they had to do, why that church is not still standing, is they tore it apart and used it for firewood. Yeah, so, hey, you don't want to freeze to death, especially if you're bleeding to death. So that's what they used that, and that's what left of the mound is still there, but the church itself is properly gone. So you'll see it's kind of like this was built, this person lived, died, and then there's like no date. And they're saying those are from the 1600s because they really weren't literate enough to inscribe on stone. Another fun fact about St. Paul's Church is there's a Freemason that was buried here. Bill, and he was used the gravesite because people bought their death place long before they were dead. So up until 2009, people were still being buried here. So you'll see every now and then there's still a recent grave. Another historical significance, the Revolutionary War broke out, and they still hadn't finished building this church, with the church we see today. So as we were talking earlier about the different slates and stone in one of the buildings in the center of town, the exact same thing happened here. They finished the main part of the house, and the tower wasn't finished, and as we go by, you'll see that there's different layers right from this town. And the more intense stonework that needed to be done, they got hired specialists from Manhattan to put that together. Not a clock tower, it's just a bell tower. Great, that bell is the twin for the bell in Philadelphia. Yes, and I think it's 100% silver. And during the Revolutionary War, they buried it because they didn't want the British and the Hessian soldiers who would just take, as they did with the church, take the church apart, take the bell apart, rust it, melt it down, and use it for bullets. So they buried it. And when they finished it after the war, they put the bell up in the tower. They still give bell tower tours. I advise you to come on a weekday, usually Wednesday I think is the best. Come by, take a look at the bell. It's really amazing. As we walk up further, you'll see some of the more affluent citizens of Mount Vernon were able to get a more decorative. We had presidential visits constantly to this area up until the 20s.
Why does it say Manhattan site?
It's a Manhattan site because...
Mount Vernon.
Yeah, it should be. It should be a Mount Vernon site, but there's bordering issues. Yeah, we could get some white out. Oh, yeah. What's that?
Wasn't there something about Thomas Paine and common sense?
Denzel Washington. When I was on the city council, a group of men came in, from all different professions, very respectful bunch of men, and they wanted to tell me about Billy Thomas. I just happen to know Billy Thomas, and the reason why they wanted to talk about Billy was because he basically brought them up as young men, and they all were very successful. Denzel Washington is one we all know, but I'm telling you, there's doctors, there's lawyers, there's you name it out there, that this man Billy Thomas influenced, and I was almost in tears when these men came to us at the city council because they respect this man like they were his father, like he was their father. So when I was on the council, I was able to rename a street or co-designate a street. So this corner here is called Billy Thomas Way. Now, what's significant about Billy Thomas is he's still living. So this is a living legend that we have that we can go up and meet and talk to. And I'm telling you, there's about 50 men that this man brought up. Denzel Washington just happened to be one of them. So this Boys and Girls Club, it used to just be the boys club, has really brought people in from the community. They got to know one another. They looked out for one another. And I'm telling you, these men are incredible that came before the council to rename this street. So when you talk about the community, building, children, this place right here is a nucleus for the people in this community. So when you see, if you ever go to their fundraisers, you have the opportunity to, maybe you can't afford the high price, give a donation, because you're definitely helping the kids in the community that really have no place. Wait. For the history of Mount Vernon, the most significant house of all is this house right here. This is John Stevens' house. John Stevens is the founder of Mount Vernon. He's the one who came from Manhattan, and he brought about, I think, 100 families up to develop 100 lots, and they formed this place called Mount Vernon. So if you notice, this house is on an angle. It's not on the grid. So this is the significance of this house. There are 4 historic sites in Mount Vernon. St. Paul's, Trinity Church, which we just kind of passed. We didn't go by it, but we passed it. Stephen's house, and what happens to be my church, First United Methodist Church. 4 historic sites. But as far as Mount Vernon history is concerned, this is the most significant house that we have. Well, it's owned by the city. When Ernie Davis was mayor, we got some grants for them to fix it up. They built this brickwork around it, really set back and protected it. But we want to keep the historical significance of it. It's been vandalized, so it's time that we repaired the house again. I honestly don't know what's going on with it right now, but this is a house that if we were to protect any house in Mount Vernon, we need to protect this one. This is Mount Vernon history at its finest.
It was built in
It
was built in the 1850s, so you got to think about how old, how long.
From Manhattan, and they bought up a bunch of lots up in Mount Vernon, and they built affordable houses. That's what the story is of the Stevens effort. This building is also significant. You know the name of this one? You know who it's named after? Shelton Dole was the pastor of Grace Baptist Church. The significance of this site was there was a West Side colored YMCA on this site. And what happened here was there was boxing and all kinds of stuff going on here because the YMCA on 22nd Avenue didn't allow people of color to go there. That's the significance of this Dole Center. The other significant thing that you need to know about the YMCA now on 2nd Avenue is it's now part of the YMCA of Central Westchester. And they have been trying to close it. And they're repeating the pattern, aren't they? Because the pattern is we have a multicultural Y, a part of a larger YMCA. The purpose of a nonprofit organization is to provide services for people who need services. And rather than maintain the service, they've been looking forever to close it. We need to look out for what that's about. If the Central Y decides that that's a building that they need to get rid of, we need to talk about taking it back because that Y was fully paid for by Mount Vernon residents for Mount Vernon use, and they shouldn't be allowed to sell it out from under it.
And that's true. The pool in that Y was done by an organization called Handy for handicapped individuals in the city. It was put together by Loretta Tolson, a longstanding member of the Presbyterian Church, significantly for handicapped individuals to get exercise. Because they're in a weightless environment, you don't have the gravity pulling down on you, and you can have a hard time walking as is. So that Y is so much history.
A little bit of weather, that's good. We thank God, we pray God's peace be on you all, and we pray that next year we'll be much bigger and much stronger and working for great causes here in the city of Mount Vernon, where we are working and living and trying to cooperate and make this city much greater than what it is. We have the potential, and we pray God that you come to 10 South 2nd Avenue where we're at to learn more about our faith and what we can do to help build this community as human citizens. We thank God and we pray God peace be with you all and your families as we say Assalamu Alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank Mary Harris for making all of this organizational effort possible. Mount Vernon Neighbors United is an organization of Mount Vernon Neighborhood Associations. We need you to participate. Joe Pablo is working on a website. It's called mtvernonnu.org. If you want to see pictures from today, you want to see what we're doing through the year, we have a summit in June. We need everybody to be part of it. Okay.